All right, let me go ahead and take a look at it. Meaningful choice.
What's up, everybody? So, during the Shadowlands alpha and the beta, honestly, I felt the most disconnected from the World of Warcraft audience that I've ever felt. It was, to me, a mind-blowing experience. Now, the subject matter that prompted this is, of course, the Covenant system. And as we know, the Covenant system didn't really pay off like we kind of thought it would. Blizzard watered it down quite a lot, to the point where most people just kind of had an alt to play through the campaign, and other than that, they didn't really care. Most people just fell into the meta of whatever's best, I'm going to play. We saw statistically that's the case. So it's not really about the Covenants. I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is the idea of the meaningful choice. This was a thing started by Blizzard. Blizzard were all about the meaningful choice and the fact that they were, in their words, afraid that if they couldn't put choices like this back into World of Warcraft, then we could not have choices like that at all. That I found was about the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life, because you make the game, you can make as many choices as you want. The idea that we can only have one style of choice, and that's got to be this meaningful idea, is utterly nuts, because you can make whatever the hell you want. You are the restaurant owners and you create the menu, you can put whatever you want on it. But
so I'll actually ask you guys before I get any farther into it. Yeah, listen, like, y'all are making me mad about this. Man, fuck you guys. Like, this hair, like, preach hair thing. Like, I'll be right back. Give me a minute. I'm pissed. How do you guys feel about Covenants now that the game's been out for a couple of months? See, like, the main thing that I really don't like about Covenants, here's what I don't like about them, more than anything else, is the fact that you have to redo the renown on all of them and the anima requirements. Like, all of the dude, Shadowlands has so much busy work. Like, the abilities piss me off, yeah, sure. But it's also just like the busy work. The fucking busy work. Like, I have to sit around and, like, I'll do the math in my head. It's like, okay, I have to do this thing, that thing, the other thing. It's like, fuck, man. I've got to spend all day playing the game just to keep up with it. It's crazy.
A lot of people bought into that and were very afraid that the idea of RPGs was dying out in World of Warcraft. Now, I couldn't really deal with it at the time. Creating all the content for the Shadowlands alpha and the beta was a massive, massive undertaking for me and my team. But I did set aside a project in my mind. A lot of the things that people argued about the whole meaningful choice thing was from old school RPGs that they played. Mostly they were single player RPGs. Now, there is a definitive difference between single player RPG and an MMORPG that has some competitive elements in it and teamwork. So I'm aware of that, but we'll push forward regardless. I didn't agree with a lot of what people said. I've been playing games since I was, you know, very, very small. And when I think of those RPGs, what I don't think about is how I was punished or had to face severe consequences for my choices without being able to go back and redo them should I want to. Save scumming is a very real thing in nearly every RPG, and you can do all these elements, or in fact, most of them are pretty on rails. Some of the best RPGs ever made don't have those kinds of choices in there. We think about Legend of Zelda series, it's absolutely an RPG, and then we also look at old school games on the Super Nintendo where you have a couple of...
It's not like you could go and just accidentally throw away the Master Sword. It's like, oh, I lost, shit. Man, guys, I lost my piece of the Triforce. Fuck, man. I gotta restart now. And that's the thing, is like, a lot of these games don't even really have this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's definitely true.
Choices, and there can be some after effects, but it's not going to punish you particularly. Maybe you lose a vendor or something like that, but nothing out of the ordinary. So how do we test this? Well, of course, I've played massive amounts of RPGs throughout my life. I've been playing RPGs at least 2 or 3 times a year since I was very, very, very small, probably about 11 years old. And now we decided to set a little project. What we'll do to refresh our minds is we'll go back in time. We'll go through an RPG of every decade for the last like 30 years, and we'll see how they developed. How did the game developers of these most promising RPGs change over time based on what they'd seen in the past? So we started all the way back with the Super Nintendo with Chrono Trigger, and then we moved on to Knights of the Old Republic, then we moved on to Divinity Original Sin 2, and we finally finished up with Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I'm certainly not here to argue the pros and cons or the bugginess of Cyberpunk 2077. That's not what I'm particularly interested in, but be aware that alongside this, we've also played the Mass Effect trilogy, the Fallout games, we've also played The Witcher, and most other RPGs you can think of. I have not played Final Fantasy VII. I apologize. I tried. I didn't enjoy it. But you get the idea. So we've played a lot of these
Final
things.
Fantasy's
now,
for nerds,
when
man.
it comes to meaningful choice, the biggest problem I had with
Everybody
how Blizzard
knows it.
presented it and how it was being argued is it didn't really have anything to do with the Covenants. The Covenants
Yeah.
were kind of a mystery. They were nebulous. The idea of the Covenants was being presented. I was playing the Covenants. I was fortunate enough to test them out and realize that they were really, really quite shallow. What we had was some Soulbind guys who didn't really ever leave the Sanctum. We had some cool abilities, but they were also tied to being over in a faction you may not like. And this is where the conflict happened. It's like, hey, I don't really like the Night Fae. Most of you will know my main character, Hunter, is Night Fae. The ability was the absolute best that we could get. So that was the way I went. I did not like being Night Fae. I did not want anything to do with the Night Fae. I didn't like the armor. I didn't like the mounts. I didn't like the voice acting for damn sure. So everything about the Night Fae I disliked besides the ability. Therefore, I personally do feel I got a raw deal. I didn't really get to choose what I wanted because it was up to Blizzard to make these abilities not be so.
Yeah, most people are going to pick the one that's really good. Like, for example, there's not a lot of warriors that play Maldraxxus because Maldraxxus isn't really that good for warriors. I think it got buffed. I don't know if it's good now. I'm not sure. But in general, people act like there's an actual choice or whatever, but there's really not. There's really, really fucking not. And it's disappointing, but I don't think that's ever really going to go away.
Skewed, and they're more balanced now. That's unquestionable.
Night Fae's
but we
over too,
knew
so
when
we'll
this
play
game
it.
was being
Probably,
developed that they were going to be all over the place, and they were. They were very much all over the place, and in many cases still are. I think of it a bit like this. So if me and a couple of buddies are wandering around town, and then one of them spots, hey, there's a brand new Starbucks opening up, and it has a brand new menu. Let's go and try it out. So we say, okay. So we trundle into this brand new Starbucks, and our wonderful barista reacts with such gusto to be there to try out this brand new menu. Our first guy is really into coffee. He loves.
Oh my god. Okay. Why is it like it's like there are so many videos now that I'm just in the fucking video randomly. Fake Asmon's buff? Yeah, that's totally. Oh yeah, it had to use that picture of me too. The worst fucking possible picture, man. Why are you shirtless? It's Photoshop, man. That's not actually me. I'm way more fit than that. Trust me. That's Photoshop.
This, and he's going to spend many minutes, as many of you know, deciding does he want the macchiato, the cappuccino, does he want to throw a caramel shot in, does he want an extra shot of caffeine in there, all these things. He's going to spend ages and ages considering his meaningful choice with this menu that he's been presented.
Yes.
On the other hand, our other drinker is only interested in his favorite. He likes it simple, he's just going to pick a latte. And that's all he wants out of it, because that's simple as it needs to be for him. He doesn't like over complication, he likes the way it tastes. I'm
going to be honest, like this metaphor, I'm completely distracted. Like I'm completely distracted. I'm not even thinking about the metaphor. I'm just thinking about fucking the picture, man. Like I can't even keep it in mind. Fuck.
Happy with it, it's the one that suits him, and he can make that choice really, really easily just from looking at the menu. Is that's what I prefer, that's what I'm going with. Now, you come over to me. I don't drink coffee, so I'm just gonna have a water. And again, our barista reacts with sadness. Why do you like that?
Sad.
Well, that's what I enjoy. That's the way I like to have my drinks, is to have a nice drink of water. I don't like coffee. It's as simple as that. And therefore, none of your choices that you're presenting to me mean anything to me.
Oh my fucking god. Okay.
Here's the clutch, and this is what I discovered playing through these games. While I was playing through all these RPGs and thinking about the old RPGs I used to play, I was jotting down notes. What were the meaningful choices to me? I have a lucky advantage in that I can play these games in front of thousands of people. So what does that allow me to do? It allows me to see what is meaningful to everyone else. And the amazing thing is, it's different for absolutely everybody. And this is the clutch of when a company or a developer tells you, this is meaningful, right?
Yes, it is.
No, not really. It's different.
That's actually a really good point. Like developers trying to tell people what's meaningful and trying to direct content. I think that's actually a really important insight, because a lot of these developers and a lot of these games, they try to like force you into caring about things. They try to like make you care about something, but at the end of the day, the player doesn't really give a shit about it. And I think that if you're trying to force players into caring about something, you're going down a losing path.
for every single person. There's no such thing in any of the RPGs I've played, or any of the ones since, where the company tried to tell me, this is really important choice here, unless I was moving into the end game. They allowed me, for the most part, in nearly all of them, to do something I want. Now, that's not to say there weren't consequences. There were consequences, but they were consequences of my own design. They were consequences that I was okay with. They were consequences that I weighed up and was like, that's not really a consequence to me. In fact, that's fine with me. Let's give some examples. So I'm going to annoy some of you, especially your big RPG fans, but I'm not going to.
I've never been a big fan of Fallout. Like, I don't know why I'm saying that, but like, I've never, like, the game has just never appealed to me, like, at all. And like, also, it's not like I don't like it. It's not like it's a bad game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying I look at it and I have literally zero inclination to even think about playing the game. It's like, it could not be more like off-putting to me. Just don't like it. I don't know what to say. I just don't like it.
Before we get to the games we did play, let's talk about something like Mass Effect. And famously, among my community, I don't like Garrus. I don't like Garrus at all. Garrus's dialogue was kind of okay. His story was kind of okay.
I hate him too. What's his name?
Ultimately, in gameplay, I didn't find he suited my team composition at all, and therefore I benched him. And people got very, very, very upset because he was their favorite. To him, he was super important, and the choice to leave him behind, or the choice to take him along, was of vital importance. And they got even upset when the game wouldn't let you take him with them. They got super upset at the prospect that he might die because it's very meaningful to them. In other players' ideas, and certainly in the Mass Effect games and The Witcher and so on and so forth, it comes down to who can you romance. That's a massive, meaningful choice to a lot of people. In The Witcher 3, I romanced nobody. I didn't like any of the characters there that you could romance at all. They didn't.
What do you mean, dude? What, are you crazy? Here's the thing, is like, Yennefer's hot as fuck, number one. Triss is a thought. Like, dude, like, Triss would 100% have an OnlyFans. Like, let's be honest, number one. Number two, she was think about this. Geralt lost his fucking memory. She's friends with Yennefer. She knew they were dating, and she fucking snaked in there and just kind of took her place while this dude didn't even remember what the fuck happened. She's a fucking snake, man. Like, that's a cold bitch. And like, Yennefer's her friend too. Like, they're supposed to be friends.
Like their attitudes, I didn't like the way they talked to Geralt, therefore I ignored all their advances because I wasn't interested. Whereas, for my community, the meaningful choice of who you're going to romance is a really big deal. And people will go to war
Yennefer's
with
way
each
hotter.
other. How can you like that character over this character? How is it possible to enjoy that character or not like that character? In all the RPGs, it came down to different things for different people with meaningful choices. To expand on that a little bit, let's look at Chrono Trigger. So Chrono Trigger was the first game we played all the way back when. Now, what's the meaningful choice in Chrono Trigger? Not a great deal, actually. That game was old school, it's more on rails, and the only real choice you get is to which party members to take along. However, if you want to take part in their story, you have to take them along. Meaningful choice was really about how you wanted to use those characters. Which combos would you like? And that came down to gameplay stuff, which I'm very
like Super
into.
Mario
Guess
RPG
what?
was the same thing.
That was a meaningful choice to me. I didn't care about the characters in terms of their personalities or stories. My meaningful choice with this situation came down to gameplay, very similar to World of Warcraft. Well, that was way back when. What were the consequences for me making those choices? Zero. Absolutely zero. That was my consequences where I wouldn't get an ability to use that I didn't particularly want in the first place. So I'm fine with it. That wasn't the same with the Covenants though. There are definitely elements of the Covenant system that I wanted and was not going to get access to. That's a point of frustration. I'm okay with being frustrated with that. That's not what I want, but that's what I'm being presented.
It is what
As we move forward to Knights of the Old Republic, The meaningful choices got a little bit thicker this time in terms of consequence. This time around, you couldn't really mess around with your character too much in terms of your character's design. Once you'd started down a road, you were mostly fixated
I've never
on
played this game
that
before.
road. It's hard to change.
So I can't really. I don't know what's going on with this
to a
one.
tank or to a spellcaster. It doesn't give you those opportunities to do that. Not only that, it gives you a number of characters to bring along, and their story pays off massively in the end of the game, which means the meaningful choices there, for a lot of people, were expanding on those extra characters' side stories.
Yeah.
I only liked some of the characters, therefore my meaningful choice was very different. Whereas some players were like, well, I have to get everybody so we can get everybody to the end and try and keep them alive. For me, it went more Mass Effect style. In this time around, I didn't want to take a lot of these characters along. I didn't like HK, for example. I'm sorry, don't shoot me. I didn't enjoy talking to him. I didn't enjoy his dialogue. So his story went by the wayside.
I've just never really got into like a lot of these, like, yeah, I've never gotten into a lot of these RPG games. I don't know what it is about me. Maybe I'm just like, I can never really get into the escapism into it. Yeah, I know you guys are upset about the way Preach plays video games, man. Y'all are not happy about it.
I focused on a couple of characters that I wanted along with me. What was my consequences? Some of them died. Oh well.
Fuck them.
But that was a fair consequence.
Fuck them, dude.
I didn't like those characters anyway. So if they're going to die...
That's a win-win.
Oh well, unlucky. In fact, I did kill everybody in Knights of the Old Republic, but that was because of a game bug. But that's by the by. Let's move forward then to my favourite game that we played over this RPG that actually presented with the most impressive, meaningful choices ever. Divinity Original Sin 2. I made a video about it last week, and I fully still recommend you guys check that out. But
this is the game that McConnell wanted me to play. This game, it looks so complicated. It's so, like, it's so fucking complicated. I think it would just drive me crazy, and it's amazing. See, everybody really likes the game. They think it's really good. I just feel like if I played a turn-based game, I'd just constantly be bored and annoyed. You know what I mean?
What was the meaningful choices? They were everywhere. And this is RPG done right. Because you cannot guarantee that you as a developer might put a meaningful choice in front of somebody or what you believe is a meaningful choice and the player will accept it. I'm sure we've all seen those memes of people looking at game developers like they create a puzzle for us and then the players do it totally different, and that is the reality of this scenario, is we all do things differently. We all perceive things differently. One character somebody loves, another one doesn't. One play style somebody loves, another one doesn't. And all the way through Divinity I was presented with exceptional amounts of dialogue options so I could play exactly how I wanted to play. Thereby there was no consequences. Even if somebody was angry at me or died at me, that is fine. Because that is what I wanted to happen in nearly every single case. Not only that, fully unrestricted swapping around of abilities and characters. Playing through all these RPGs, the biggest...
That's what I don't like about the Covenant abilities. Is like, I want to be able to use the other abilities for the other Covenants, and I can't use them. That's like, at the end of the day, it just sucks that I can't do that. Like, you can talk about, like, meaningful choice, any of this other shit, but at the end of the day, it just sucks that I can't do that. What all the games have in common, they're single player? Yeah. It's like Blizzard takes a single player game philosophy, they put it in a multiplayer game. It doesn't work.
Bugbear I now have after playing a game like that is any game that kind of sets you on a path at level 1, such as where do you put your talent points. Cyberpunk would be a great example of this, where you start down a road and then 20 hours, 30 hours into the game, you're looking at the grass is greener over there. In Cyberpunk, I went down a tech tree. Why? It says futuristic cyber game. It made sense to me to go with the tech tree. One problem with that is I became ludicrously overpowered mid-game, and also, I'd kind of done it a million times by that point. But what I could see is there were swords, machine guns, all sorts of crazy smart weapons, loads of stuff over there. I was like, I just want to try that out. In a game like Divinity, that presents choices that you can also change your mind on very, very easily at a drop of a hat, that was great because I could go, hey,
I think like WoW, like they always have to punish you for taking chances and doing different things. And I think that's kind of like where the fundamental problem is that they have to impose a punishment on the player for wanting to change decisions. And they do that in order to stop metagaming. But the reality is that they don't really stop the metagaming by doing that. Because everybody just goes and they do pretty much the same thing anyway. I don't know. Like, that's what I think the fundamental issue is that it's not the choices that are the problem, it's the friction between them.
can go and swap over to that, no problem. And I absolutely did that. That gave the game so much more choice and was way more meaningful. I spent minutes and minutes and minutes and hours and hours and hours and outside of the game thinking, lying in bed, what do I want to do? Because I had those choices all the time. Similar to World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
What is a meaningful choice to you? Well, let me tell you what is meaningful to me. If I'm going to a dungeon, and Mythic Plus dungeon, and it's sanguine, and I'm playing a druid, do I want to take Typhoon here or not? It's not always the correct answer. How's my tank? Is he strong? Weak? Do we want him to have some support? Maybe I'm going to take Treants. If not, I'm going to pull back and go with something a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more helpful. Is it something where we kind of want to lock mobs down? Is the guy going to need to kite? Maybe I want Typhoon, maybe I want Mass Roots. These are all the choices I think about when going into a dungeon if I have those options.
Yeah, I think
some
most
of the
people
worst
do.
classes I play in World of Warcraft just don't have those options. They have the AoE build. They have the single target build. And I don't feel any meaningful choice going into that environment with that, because that's not what I like. On the contrary...
Well, you have the only meaningful choice is the Covenant, really. I mean, you can change the soul binds, but the soul binds aren't really that big. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's one thing that I really don't like. It's the soul binds are not really that important. It's mostly the covenants and the fact that you have to decide the right covenant at the beginning. And if you don't have the right covenant, you're just kind of fucked up and you're behind. I just wish it was easier to change them. Like, that's, I could talk about this a million times and like kind of talk around it, but like, I'll just say it, make it very simple. I wish that it was easier to change from one covenant to another covenant. I don't like having to refarm Renown. I don't want to have to refarm a bunch of other stuff. And it feels like there's just a punishment. It feels like I'm being punished by doing these kinds of things. It sucks.
Some players only play what they enjoy. Sometimes they will only play a spec that they enjoy. If it's off meta, it doesn't matter. They're going to play that spec all the time. I can't play that way. The choice is different for me. It works differently, which then brings us back to the ultimate conclusion here.
Which is?
Meaningful choice can't be forced on players because they're not going to find the same meaning. Going back to that coffee situation, you can't just create something and say, this is what you're going to be dealing with, because everyone's going to look at it differently. The only thing you can definitely guarantee is frustration, and that frustration is going to come from the players who look at your labeled meaningful choice and not see the meaning in it, and just see frustration and genuine consequence that they're going to miss out on things they enjoy.
Yeah, because most people don't care about the RP element of the game. Like, people play multiplayer games. Like, you play a single player game, your goal, more often than not, is going to be to enjoy the ambience of the game and the narrative of the game and the RPG elements of the game. People play multiplayer games for a myriad of reasons that is not just the RP of the game. People play WoW because they like playing with their friends. They like the social experience that the game has. And there's so many other reasons of playing a online multiplayer game versus an RPG game that if you make decisions based off of what's good for a single player RPG game, you can alienate all of those other people that are not part of that group.
That's not fun. That's not interesting. None of the RPGs I played had anything like that. None of the RPGs I've played in the past have anything like that, where it's like, and I feel bad. I feel frustrated, I feel annoyed. And the idea that you can only have one style of meaningful choice in an RPG is crazy, because every RPG I played had magnitudes of them. It's just that they weren't all meaningful to me, but I found meaning in some of them. And I attest this day, World of Warcraft, for me, still has tons of meaningful choices. That might not appeal to everybody. In fact, I know, after everything we went through in the alpha beta, it absolutely doesn't.
No.
But what you can't do, you absolutely can't do, is present one thing and say that's what it's going to be. And then also tell the players that if it can't be this, then it's going to be nothing at all, because that's just plain untrue. Plain untrue.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. I'd love to see your thoughts and maybe even just what your favorite RPGs are, or any choices that you made throughout them that you generally feel, or maybe you disagree with me. Maybe some of the choices you made did lead to big consequences. Ideally not consequences like, well, I got frustrated because I couldn't play the other
I do
thing,
generally agree with this video.
Right there with you on that one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Yeah, stop whining about the game. It's you, the players that are ruining it. Grown up, it's only fun to win. You min-max the hell out of it. That's the purpose of MMO. Well, wait a minute. This is the problem. Is like nobody really is able to dictate. I think MMOs do serve purposes by the nature of the way that they exist online, but that just seems stupid to me. Like it's such a stupid way to look at it. The fact is that a lot of people enjoy min-maxing. Like, I don't understand why this is some sort of like weird fucking thing that nobody can consider or conceive of, but I enjoy min-maxing. It's fun. There's a lot of people that enjoy min-maxing. It just, I don't understand that. And also, like, why is this a bad issue? If people don't like this, I think a lot of people didn't like this. The majority of people did not like the way the Covenant system was going out. Like, all of the, every measure of online feedback that we got for Covenants that was anywhere online was overwhelmingly negative about the direction Blizzard was taking the Covenants in, and the direction that Blizzard was taking meaningful choice in. And how can you say this is just a small minority of people when every single group of people that's going in there is clearly saying that that's what they're doing? Like, that's what they don't like. I don't understand that at all. It just doesn't make any sense, man. Because it leaves out casuals, it leaves casuals out of the game, and casuals pay the bills. That's completely wrong, because that assumes that casual players, by the nature of them being casual, won't care about making their character better. I think that's completely wrong. That's so patronizing. Casual players care about making their character better just the same as hardcore players do. And I would actually even argue that casual players care about it more and are more driven by direct power gains and things like that, because they don't take the game as seriously. They don't have the same type of emotional investment in the Covenants. Like, they don't care about what Vin Theory is, or they don't care about what Night Fae is. It's the fairies or the vampires. They don't give a fuck. They just want to go with whatever is good for their character. So I think for casual players, it's even more constricting. It's even more confining. Like, that's my opinion. It's the same thing. Casual player want their items sent to them in the post. Some of them do, yeah. What I think is very odd to me is that people claim that they speak for casual players and simultaneously just assume that casual players have the direct opposite opinion of the general public. Like, somehow the general public isn't casual players, or the general public wants something that's completely different. It's like this silent majority bullshit argument that, oh yeah, everybody that's not speaking out agrees with me. Like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of a moron thinks like that? No, that's not the way it works. I would assume that the amount of people that are speaking out are representative of the amount of people that play the game. Wow. It's so crazy to me, man. Yeah, silent majority. It's just, I don't understand. Wowhead, yes. Yes, silence means you agree. Yeah, it's so silly to me.